Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Denman. Welcome to Denman's Den, and again, thank you for joining me again. I Today am going to be making a presentation about love as a transformative power. At the end of my last video, and if you didn't see it, please go see it because this connects to what I talked about in the last video about Christian nationalism. I made a promise that I would talk about love as a transformative power, especially in terms of Christian nationalism and how we, if we operate in this kind of love, can really change the situation not only in our country but in the world. So, without further introduction, my reflection is called Love is the Most Transformative Power in the Universe. Love is the one and only thing that can transform sorrow into joy, apathy into sensitivity, indifference into motivation, harshness into gentleness, evil into good, death into life. Now you might be asking, okay, how does this happen? How can we learn to love in this way? Well, it sounds simple to us. We have our ideas about love. But truly, love is not simple. It is the hardest thing we will ever do in our lives. Most of the time, love is not some soaring, wonderful feeling that we feel. Love is rather a very difficult choice we must make to do some of the hardest things we will ever do in our lives. I'm going to utilize the last 12 verses of the 12th chapter of Paul's letter to the Romans, because that passage, more than any other in any literature I have read about love, and I've read plenty, both secular and sacred, explains in just a few sentences how we can learn to love so that it transforms people and experiences in our lives. So let me begin with the first passage, or first verse of the passage. And let me begin by saying that Paul uses the word for love in the entire text, agape. It's not familial or brotherly love. It's not erotic or romantic love. Agape love is absolutely unconditional, completely grace-based, completely grace-filled love. The text starts, "Let your love be genuine." Genuine love is agape. It has no limits, pronounces no judgments, harbors no resentments, knows no conditions. It is the very presence and essence of who God is and who God is among us. It is what another biblical passage is talking about in saying, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and the one who loves is born of God and knows God. For God is love." And that's in 1 John 4, verses 7 and 8. The rest of this chapter, these verses from Romans 12, shows us the way to live genuine love, to live God's very presence and essence in our midst. The next verse says, "Hate what is evil, hold fast or cling to what is good." Now, this isn't a violent hate that lashes out, but rather it's a sense of repulsion that causes us to not want to grasp and hold, but rather to open our hands and push away, or even release if we ourselves have been hanging on to something evil. It is the good that we must grasp and onto which we must maintain a firm hold. Genuine love, like a compass, is automatically oriented toward the good. It is not just being nice to people. When we show genuine love toward someone, we are moving them toward goodness, toward God's goodness. To love someone is not just to cater to their likes and dislikes or to do nice things for them. I mean, that is certainly can be part of how we demonstrate love, but it's even more than that, much more. Genuine love is to act toward others in ways that move them toward and help them experience more goodness in their own lives and more of God's goodness. The next verse reiterates, love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Can you imagine what life would be like if we would compete with each other for who could show the most honor to another human being? A sort of an Olympics of showing honor to one another. Whenever I read this verse, I try to start an inner competition with myself. I give myself a goal of seeing how much honor I can show to other people. When I was still working at a 8-hour-a-day job, I often did this with my coworkers. I gave genuine compliments. I would send emails of encouragement, even to my boss. I didn't just make things up. I was attentive to what my coworkers were doing, and I began to notice them, and I noticed the things that they were saying and doing, and I tried to respond to them. And so the compliments, the emails of encouragement, and the offers of help that I gave were truly real things that I saw happening around me during the week. And after a while, I noticed that my coworkers were coming to my office door and seeking to be in relationship with a brief chit-chat or even a hug sometimes. And one coworker even came in and sat down, and she actually apologized to me for something that she thought she had said that, quite frankly, I had barely noticed and had not been offended or taken personally or even remembered. I found myself being honored when I was just trying to outdo myself in showing honor each time the opportunity arose. Now, these days, in retirement, I still practice my inner competition in the various activities that I am involved in, and I compliment what I notice and observe and offer words of encouragement to my neighbors, my friends, my family, and my partner, Vaughn. And even if no honor comes back to me, that's not important to me. I do it because it brings me a sense of joy, as well as continues to help me listen, observe, and respond to others in ways that honor them and ultimately that love them. The next verse. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. As I age, I tire more easily. And it is difficult to be ardent, zealous, and even passionate. But this verse isn't talking about a level of physical activity. It's talking about a mental and emotional attitude. When I'm feeling discouraged and depressed, I admit that I struggle to maintain zeal, enthusiasm of spirit, and passion for whatever it is I'm doing, or even in my faith. I allow my personal pain to do more than it's supposed to do. Emotional, mental, and even physical pain can awaken us to awareness about many things in our lives. They could instill compassion in us and give us patience with ourselves, with others, and with life in general. But pain can be destructive when we allow it to so overtake us that we can no longer maintain our zeal for life. I admit that several times in my life I have done just that. In fact, I have come to understand that what I would call sin in my life shows itself in the destructive path that I have allowed pain to travel in my life. Genuine love is what sets us apart as followers of Jesus and the way of love, and involves maintaining our zeal and our ardent spirit even when troubles come and pain is at hand. The next verse continues to speak to attitudes of the mind and emotions that nurture genuine love. Rejoice in hope, be patient in suffering, persevere in prayer. Rejoice in hope. It is hard to find joy in the midst of hope, because the presence of hope means that all is not yet fulfilled of our life's yearnings. And we tend to associate joy with fulfillment. Our tendency as human beings is to enjoy what we already have rather than being in joy even when we don't have what we hope for. Yet we are called to rejoice in hope. It has been recently that I have come to understand how I can participate in this calling to rejoice in hope. I don't have all that I hope for in life. I don't think that I ever have, and I don't expect that I ever will. But I am content. I am grateful for what I already have. And I realize that I have more than it sometimes seems to me that I have. The gratitude and the realization of that more have brought me contentment. And so when I reflect on my hopes for future possibilities, I rejoice, even in the yearning, even in the hoping, for contentment has really opened the gate and poured in that joy. Patience in suffering. Like rejoicing in hope, that does not come naturally for any of us. Suffering is something that we want to eliminate from our lives as quickly as possible. Usually, quite frankly, way too quickly. We don't like the pain that we feel when we are suffering. It seems to be unbearable at times. So we go for the quick fix. A drink, a pill, a sexual encounter, working all the time, a shopping spree, or some other temporary escape. Pain can be a healing, transformative force for good. But our drive to eliminate it actually intensifies the pain and brings us misery. And thus we miss out on the transformation. You have perhaps heard the saying, pain is necessary, misery is optional. There is truth in that little saying. At the point when we try to eliminate our pain, we open the door and let misery into our lives. The misery of the destruction that comes through addiction, through unhealthy attachments to persons, things, or situations, through enslavement to a lifestyle whose whole purpose is to avoid pain. Jesus told his disciples, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." Life is painful. That is an unchangeable, undeniable truth. Jesus was clearly saying that it is how we deal with our pain that sets us apart as his followers and as living in the way of love. Taking up our cross is carrying our pain and allowing it to take us, as it took Jesus, to the place of ultimate, genuine love. As Jesus himself said in John 15:13, "No one has greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends." Finally, this phrase says we are to persevere in prayer. For our development of patience in suffering needs the strengthening that only a relationship with love, and ultimately with God, who is love, can give us. Jesus frequently went off by himself to a quiet place to pray. Since Jesus needed to do that, then we must certainly need to do that, and we must follow him into prayer. The next verse begins to show us what genuine love looks like in relationships with other people. It says, "Contribute to the needs of the saints, extend hospitality to strangers." In other words, whether the person is a member of our biological family or our work family or our church family if we have one, or a stranger, we need to try and find out what their needs are and seek to meet them as best as we are able. Hospitality is one of the most obvious and beautiful ways that we can offer genuine love to others. There are biblical examples of communities whose lack of hospitality to the stranger resulted in their eventual destruction. Hospitality is the key to health as an individual, as a community, and as a country. We don't build walls and keep doors closed to keep people out. What sets us apart as followers of Jesus is our genuine love, and so we invite them in and give them a seat at the table. And then the next verse, Paul begins to lead us into what genuine love truly looks like with difficult people that are hard to love. He says, "Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them." Without overstating the obvious, this is where it gets so difficult that it becomes, as I stated at the beginning of this time of reflection, it becomes one of the hardest things we will ever have to do. Our every instinct when we have been insulted, offended, bullied, and persecuted is to retaliate, to shout insults in return, to offend, to bully, and persecute back, and quote unquote, give them a taste of their own medicine, as the old saying goes. But genuine agape love is to return all of this with a blessing. That doesn't come naturally for any of us. It seems to go against our human instincts. If we are not practicing genuine love with God, who is love, we may find it impossible. Nevertheless, the love that propels us into blessing those who curse us sets us apart as followers of the way of love. The next verse, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. So now, we are not only to bless those difficult others, we are needing to be happy and joyful with them and for them, and we are needing to weep with them when they are in pain and even hurt with them. Empathy and compassion are easier to practice for family and friends than for all those difficult others who are also in our lives. That kind of compassion also goes contrary to our human nature. We must let go of our emotional comfort zone and join in the joy and pain of another, and do it from genuine agape love. Such empathy and compassion, once again, sets us apart as followers of Jesus and as followers of the way of love. The next verse, live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Besides empathy, humility is another quality that goes contrary to human instinct. We all have an entity called the ego. When we were children, teenagers, and young adults, it helped each of us to strengthen our identity and build our self-esteem. Over those years, we learned to feed our ego, to protect it, and to strengthen it in order to give us strength to grow in our own personhood. But as we continue to grow and develop as adults, the ego should now be serving another purpose, that of a resource of already established faith in ourselves and acceptance of life as it comes to us. No longer needing to impress others or prove ourselves, we should now have integrated our ego into who we have become, and not have it functioning as the captain of that process anymore. What we call immaturity in others is often the presence of an ego still operating as it did in youth, with the person feeding and protecting it until it becomes an obstacle, getting in the way of healthy relationships and endeavors. We don't have to look any farther than the national politics to see examples of persons whose egos are still running their identity show. So, where are we with humility? Are we living in harmony with others of differing opinions and outlooks? Or when we disagree, do we sever our connections with those of differing opinions and outlooks and just stick with the people who think like we do? Are we haughty, thinking of ourselves superior for one reason or another, like because we have more education, more money, because we're smart, or because we are married or not married, or because we have children or don't have children, or because we're racist, or maybe because we're not racist. I could go on, etc., etc. I'm sure if each of us tries, we can think of some way in which we have been haughty and therefore not associated with the lowly, which to me just means I put myself above no one and associate with whomever comes into my life on any given day, and associate with them as an equal. And I have certainly been guilty of claiming more wisdom than I have. When I was an adolescent, I remember being called a Miss Know-It-All by my parents from time to time. One expects an adolescent to act that way fairly often. But when younger, middle-aged, and older adults engage in the know-it-all attitude, it pushes others away and keeps genuine love from happening between persons. Living in harmony with those whose opinions and perspectives are different than ours, not being haughty, but associating with everyone as an equal, and letting go of a know-it-all attitude, that is the humility that sets us apart as followers of the way of love. Humility is the foundation for being able to do what the next two verses state. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. In so far as it is possible and depends on you, live peaceably with all. To me, this is where faith is not just a noun. It is also a verb, an action word by which to live my life. As I said before, it is human instinct to retaliate, to repay evil for evil. We are called instead to live in peace with everyone. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is rather the presence of healing and wholeness in the midst of conflict. How? Well, here comes the answer in the last 3 verses of this chapter. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for God, in other words, for love. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. It is human to be angry when cruelty and evil are done to us and to others. Anger, when we acknowledge it and keep its power within our control, usually gives us energy to act toward resolving its discomfort and addressing the problems that brought on the anger in the first place. But when anger becomes revenge, it now takes control of us. We lash out, and we attempt to harm those who have harmed us. Even when we don't do anything harmful ourselves, we are still looking at our adversaries with contempt, even if we don't say so outwardly. Listen, my friends, if we demonize those with whom we disagree or whose actions outrage us, then we are engaging in the very same evil that so angers us. I read a book a few years ago, and it's been several years ago now, called Without Buddha, I Could Not Be a Christian. Written by a man named Dr. Paul Knitter. And Dr. Knitter used insights from his study of Buddhism to enhance and inform his Christian faith. One of his insights involved the Buddhist greeting, Namaste, which acknowledges that everyone we meet has all the same goodness that is in us. And when we acknowledge that, it enables us to relate to others with genuine compassion. However, this way of looking at things must see clearly from the other direction also. If we can recognize that others have all the goodness we have, we also have to recognize that we have the same capacity for evil as those whose actions we abhor. When we oppose those who do evil in our world with anger that is vengeful, we are more likely to perpetuate the evil they do. So how then do we respond to evil? What sets apart as followers of the way is when we respond in the same way that Jesus did. Jesus knew that only the willingness to respond to hostility with peace, to hatred with forgiveness, to fear with love can redeem evil. I think that's what Jesus meant when he said those who want to follow him would have to take up their cross. Jesus was calling us all to follow his example of responding to evil by not retaliating, but by embracing those who do evil with mercy and forgiveness. I don't believe that there's anything in human experience that is more difficult and challenging than embracing with compassion those who we consider evil. I don't think it's possible to do that without denying self, without setting aside the selfish ego needs that we have, and truly being that living sacrifice, which Paul made the stage setter for this 12th chapter of Romans in the first 2 verses. Only when we can get outside of ourselves can we truly relate to those who do evil in our world in a way that has the chance of overcoming that evil with good. Only when we can embrace those who do evil in our world with genuine love can we hope to respond to what they do in a way that will transform our world. Responding to violence with forgiveness, responding to hatred with compassion, responding to hostility with peace. When we respond this way, we have the chance to change not only the evil they do, but more importantly, we have the opportunity to participate in the transformation of who they are, as well as of who we are. As we embrace those who do evil, we have the opportunity to transform the whole world into a place of peace and justice and freedom. That is what it means to overcome evil with good. We can truly overcome evil if we can embrace the evildoers with compassion. Now, I imagine you're probably thinking, but she's being very idealistic. And I don't blame you. It sounds that way. But there are examples of people embracing, quote unquote, the evildoers with compassion. Every day and all the time. A lot of them we don't see, but when they happen, they change the people around them. They change the person that was doing the evil, and they ultimately change us too. So I'm going to give you an example. 25 years ago, on the streets of Ann Arbor, Michigan, a young woman named Keisha Thomas was the very embodiment of the genuine love that blesses those who persecute her, that offers hospitality, empathy, and humility, and that overcomes evil with good. 25 years ago, on the streets of Ann Arbor, the Ku Klux Klan had a rally, and hundreds of angry anti-Ku Klux Klan protesters showed up to protest their rally. In the crowd of protesters, someone in the crowd noticed a white man with a Confederate flag t-shirt and a swastika tattoo standing among them. A woman with a megaphone called attention to him and shouted her accusation, "Oh, there's a Klansman in the crowd." As the man tried to run away, Keisha Thomas was among the crowd that gave chase. Someone grabbed the man and began to strike him with their protest placard and the wooden stick to which it was attached. The man fell to the ground, and the anti-Ku Klux Klan protesters began to kick him and beat him with their placards and sticks. Keisha, horrified, threw herself on top of this man to protect him from the violence being done to him. Now just think about that for a moment. He had spent his entire life up to that point hating her for the color of her skin. He had no doubt cursed her race whenever he could. Yet she gave him her protection that day, shielding him from the blows of angry protesters. Keisha has never again met the man she protected. But some time later, a young man approached her in a coffee shop while she was enjoying a meal, and he came up to her and he thanked her. When she asked him what he was thanking her for, his reply was simple. "That was my dad you protected that day." Keisha put herself at physical risk to protect someone who clearly would not have done the same for her. Who does that in this world? Who indeed? What sets us apart as followers of the way of love is that we are called to be those whose love is genuine, those who move people toward God's goodness, those who outdo one another in showing honor to others, those whose zeal for life does not waver, those who rejoice in hope, are patient in suffering, and perseverant in prayer, those who bless those who curse them, those whose empathy empowers them to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep, those whose humility allows them to live in harmony with others and associate with everyone as an equal, and those whose love takes no revenge, but loves the enemy with compassion and overcomes evil with the good that only genuine love has the power to do. Love is the most transformative power in the universe, and it begins with each one of us. This chapter of Romans begins with this verse: "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may live out and demonstrate God's perfect will, which is and always has been love." Thank you very much for listening to this reflection. I hope that it moved your heart, your mind, your soul, and that you will reply and subscribe and write some comments. Let me know that you're out there and that it touched you in some way. And even if you don't agree with some of it, that would be good if you would reply as well. I always enjoy knowing that people are listening, no matter how they respond to what I share. So thank you for tuning in to share a little bit about genuine love. And I will be talking probably tomorrow or the next day about some other issues that have come up that I'd like to share with you. But in the meantime, I wish you a wonderful day, evening, whatever time it is that you're listening to this. And God bless you. And I'll look forward to seeing you again in Denman's Den tomorrow. You take care now. Bye-bye.